where we are here, Tony Clark, President of the Baseball Player Association. Tony, I know the American players had his issues, his problems, his concerns. How about Spanish players? What are you hearing about them?
They have similar concerns. Whether you are an international player or a domestic player, we're all being affected by the changes that we're seeing in the game. And it is a privilege to hear from Yadi Molina in this clubhouse and other veteran Latin player leaders who voice their concerns and ask their questions in these meetings and even in meetings away from the ballpark. So the involvement has been tremendous, and we're grateful that the guys have spoken up the way they have.
How do you think the movement involving Latin players in Latin America, for example, the academies, the formation of the player, how do you see all this process?
We think it could be better. That the challenges that we're seeing, whether in the DR or Venezuela or other countries, could be better. That there are the hope for all of our Latin players and even our domestic players is that they leave the game better than they had it, and the opportunities that the next generation of players has is better than the opportunities than they had. And some of that is true right now, and some of it isn't as the industry itself grows. And so spent time in the DR talking with a number of the Dominican players. Haven't traveled to Venezuela yet. But in the conversations that we've had and the work that we're trying to do along with them is all with an eye on creating a better path for the next generation of kids who want to realize their dream of playing professional baseball.
Talking about traveling, you recently supervised the path with Cuba, and it's like uncharted waters for everybody. How do you think this path playing out in the future? How do you see the Players Association involvement in this path?
We hope that it lessens the likelihood that players and their families who are trying to realize their dream of playing Major League Baseball are in harm's way in trying to realize that dream. So that's the hope. So whether with Cuba or with Mexico or with even Japan or Korea, having a more uniform transfer agreement system in place, we hope helps guys and their families, protects guys and their families while providing them all an opportunity to see how good they are in Major League Baseball.
I know everybody suffers the same, but when you heard the word rebuilding and so many teams rebuilding, when you heard the word, what do you think about it?
Well, we know and have seen over the course of our history that there are always a couple of teams that are rebuilding and had tried to be that last team standing and are now having to cycle themselves back out. But what we're seeing now suggests a number of teams, a lot of teams that are doing that, and we have concerns about that, and we believe fans have concerns about that, and that's one of the reasons why we've seen the attendance drops that we've seen. That although fans understand it, they'll wait until the team is not rebuilding, competing again.
For example, here in South Florida, we're a lot of rebuildings in South Florida.
There is, and we continue to watch what those teams are doing, as we do and review all the teams. But we believe that what we're seeing, the depth of what we're seeing, and the number of teams that we're seeing it with, we believe that that's something that we should look to address.
Another word, when you heard the word strike, what comes to your mind?
A passion and concern. When players voice or offer that word, to me it demonstrates the level of concern that they have. Our guys are unbelievably passionate about the game. Most of them have been playing since they were tiny, and so when they see the game changing and when they see the fairness in values for players changing and shifting, guys that they may believe can help their team win, sitting at home, when they offer that, to me it's simply an example of their wanting to address it and their concern and commitment to making sure that the game is fair and that the game and all those involved continue to compete in the best interest of all 30 teams and all the players and all the fans.
Could I say that it's difficult to be a player over 30 nowadays in Major League Baseball?
Players, veteran players, are being evaluated differently.
As you used before?
Yes.
Experience.
Experience, particularly for those teams that are rebuilding, that experience isn't as valuable. And yet, when you hear that veteran players are being compared to first-year players, and those players being comparable, it reminds me that there isn't a metric that's been created that can value experience and leadership. And for a team that's looking to be a World Series champion, veteran players' experience and leadership is vital to that particular club.
And so we see youth, and more youth. It's like the word in play here in the Major League Baseball.
There should be a combination of both. You have to have a combination of both. Young and talented, experienced and talented, and leadership, so that over the course of 162 games, 162 games, teams that are looking to compete for 162 games, they understand that players that have gone through a 162 game season, or players that have been to the playoffs, or players that do have World Series rings, that those players are invaluable to the club, enabling them to breathe into those young players and help support those young players, not just performing on the field but off the field. The combination has to be a part of that equation, and it's unfortunate that what we've seen isn't giving as much credibility or credence to the value of that leadership and experience.
Last question: if you find some Latin player that come to MLB for the first time in his first game, what advice do you give him?
The same advice that Alan Trammell gave me, and that is that getting to the big leagues is easy. Staying in the big leagues is hard. And he told me that 25 years ago.
And it still resonates.
And I'll never forget it, because at that time I didn't understand what that meant, because I thought it was pretty hard getting to the big leagues. But as each day went by and as each game went by, I understood more and more about the challenges that were there in staying in the big leagues, and the responsibility I had to continue to adjust and improve and hone my craft at the major league level. And the only way to do that was to engage the players that came before me and ask them how they did it, and then try to apply the experience and knowledge that they had to what it is that I needed to do in order to become a veteran player like they were.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
No, my pleasure. Thank you.
I got you. Oh, I forgot.
No, as soon as you stood, I started tilting.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, hey, thank you very much.
Anytime you can find
My boy Anthony took care of you, right?
Okay. Yeah, you too.
Yes, sir. Heading out?
Yeah,
Okay, have a good day, sir.
you too.